Welcome to this session of Learn IT Courses Online, in which we started talking about SSIS, which is an ETL tool by Microsoft, and we explained what extraction, transformation, and loading means, and we created our first SSIS package. In today's session, we're going to go a step further, and we're going to give an example of what transformation is. So we're going to introduce the concept of transformation, and we're going to use a couple of them. We're going to use the sort as well as the merge features. So we're going to be talking again about ETL, where we have a source of data, we extract it, but this time around we're going to transform. We're going to make some changes to our data, or it's not going to be one-to-one, there's going to be a modification, and then we're going to load it after that to our destination. Last time around, our source was a CSV file, comma separated values file, and we loaded it into our database. This time around, our source are two tables that we have. We said on a nightly basis, building on the last session, we have stores in Chicago and Houston. They're loaded into tables, and now we'd like to merge that information, and we want to sort it alphabetically into another table, into a new table, which is the final place where all the records stay. So right now, each store has its own table. Chicago has its own. Houston has its own. And as you can see, when we query the Chicago table, we get all the Chicago employees information. When we query the Houston table, we get all of the Houston information. And this time we'd like to load this data, extract it from tables, transform it, which means we would like to sort this data alphabetically, and merge it, which means we have two sources, we have two tables, and we'd like to bring them into one final destination, sorted and merged. So we're using two transformation features. And this is how we do it. But also, as we're building it, this time we want to start using some standards to make sure that we follow what some of the standards are in terms of naming conventions, in terms of putting descriptions, to make it intuitive. In an average company, we might have 50 or 60 packages. So the first DTS package that I have, the first SSIS package that I have is named package number 1, and the next one is package number 2. I would not be able to know it, but I want to make sure that I have very clear naming conventions, that anyone that works with me or anytime I work on someone else's project, that we follow those standards. The names are very clear, the descriptions are very clear, that it's very intuitive. So as we're working on this one, not only are we going to use transformation, but we want to start using standardization. So we're going to go to New, Project, Integration Services, but this time we're going to move it into a folder in our root C drive. Let's create a folder and call it SSIS_packages. Okay, let's select that folder. And now for the name, we want to call it Integration Services. But we'd like to be more specific for our restaurant. So this is for our database, which is called the coolest restaurant. So we're going to call this cool restaurant. Okay. So now if I go to that folder and I see a package called Cool Restaurant Integration Services, I know what SSIS package that is. Now in this case, we do have a couple of sources. It's a data flow, we're moving data. We don't have to do anything else on the control flow. So we'll just go to data, flow, drag and drop, double click, and now we have those sources. In the future, we're going to talk about how I can create my connection over here to my database. Or when I drag and drop and configure it, it kind of creates it by default. But for now, we're just going to do it the easier way, the faster way. We're going to go into our source, drag and drop. We're getting it from SQL Server. The first one is the Chicago table. So the server name is Chilaxin. The database is the coolest restaurant. Still not configured, so what is it looking for? It's looking for what table am I using? Where am I getting my data from? This is the Chicago employees table. Let's just look at the columns, make sure everything looks right. Yes, everything does look right, so we're configured for the first one. It says OLE DB source. Okay, Let's drag and drop another source since we're getting data from two sources. SQL Server, yes, it's the same source. Click OK. Not configured which table specifically, so let's go there. Pick the table. In this case, it's a Houston table. Click OK. Now, if I was to save this and ask anyone to look at it, the naming convention is not intuitive. However, as I say, if I type in OLEDB source and give it a slightly different name with a description to it, such as Chicago employees, and if I was to give this a better naming convention, such as Houston employees, anyone that looks at those two will know exactly what those files contain, the sources. And again, it created my connection for me, so this is the reference to my database that I'm connected and getting the data from. So what's the next step? We want to sort that data. Before we merge it, we want to sort it by the name of the employee, so it's alphabetical. So now that we're done with source and destination, we're going to look at the transformation part of things. So here are the common forms of transformation. I can look at other ones, but here's the default ones that are used the most. So the first thing I'd like to do is sort my data. So I'm going to drag and drop. So I can sort my Chicago data first. How am I going to sort it? Well, I'd like to sort it by name. I can sort it by more than one column, but in this case, by name ascending is all I need. And I also like to sort those by name, so we're going to drag and drop, click, open it up, sort by name, and we're good to go. But now what would I like to do? I would like to merge the data from both files. So let's go to merge, drag and drop. So whatever is sorted from here gets dropped into this merge. What am I getting it from? My first input file, which is the Chicago. Click OK. And then from this sort, I'm dragging and dropping the second file, which comes in here. Okay. Finally, all of this information goes into whatever my final destination is. So it could be an Excel sheet, it could be another table. In this case, I'd like for it to be a table, or it could be any other destination. I'd like for it to be, well, let's look at the data first. Well, we can look at the data with a multicast, but in this case, let's go ahead and create a destination to be another table, which combines all of that information. So it's going to be SQL Server, the same data source. Data goes from here to the final destination. And again, for the name to be appropriate, we're going to say all employees. Okay, it's not configured, so let's go ahead and configure it. It's a new table since that doesn't exist yet. And we want to give it a name which is all employees. And click OK. All right, mappings wise, everything should match from our input to our destination. Click OK. So we're picking up data from the Chicago table and from the Houston table. We're sorting them by name alphabetically. We're merging the two files, and then our destination is a single table where everything goes into. Let's go ahead and kick it off. Okay, it looks like it picked up 4 rows from here, sorted it, 4 rows continued in. They merge, so we have 8 rows that end up in this. If this statement is true, then if we were to go into our database, we should have a new table called All Employees. And that All Employees table should have 8 rows, Chicago, Houston, all merged together. Most importantly, sorted alphabetically. And it looks that that was a success. So in today's session, we've covered naming conventions to make sure that the names are standardized and make sense. And then we started talking into transformation about sorts and merges. And we hope to see you in the next session.